been only a week since Brian and I talked, and the UCLA 2026 class has already changed for the better in a great way.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Can't even say my own name. I'm so excited because I'm joined by Brian Smith, Locked On the Portal, Locked On Seminoles. He does it all. And we haven't talked in, just like 5 days? It feels like longer, but it's only been a few days. And now the UCLA Bruins, Brian, have a top 15 class, according to some outlets, in their 2026 class in the span of a month. Since May 14th, they've gotten 11 commits in the 2026 class. We were highlighting the big get in Micah Smith, but the last few commits for UCLA have included some big offensive linemen. You've got Johnny Jones hailing from the Florida area, where you are very, very well versed in. And UCLA got a local kid in Cooper Jaworski from the local Southern California OC region, and a lot of recruits in between, Micah Champ Smith committing and Jaworski committing. What do we think, and what do you think, Brian, of what UCLA's been able to do in the last week on the O-line? It didn't seem like we were that high on it a week ago, and then that's what they've been attacking lately.
This is why recruiting is wild. You and I didn't see it coming, and here we are. So recruiting, anything can happen because we're dealing with 17-year-olds. And congrats to the Bruins staff, their back office staff, everybody for lining up. They're getting kids from Florida. They're getting like O-linemen from Florida. That's not an easy thing because all three of the programs in the state need linemen in this class. They've got two of them already. They're pretty good. So that's a great start. And they're just consistently building their class. Who knew, man? This is awesome, though. It's been a long time since UCLA football was viable as a recruiting force. Matter of fact, I don't remember the last. It's been 20 years probably since it really was.
Some would argue Jim Moore did a good job when he brought in Josh Rosen and brought in some talented guys. So maybe a little bit less, but that's still at least a decade, right? When they were absolutely getting guys. So either 10 years, or if you just throw out the Jim Moore years, 20 years when they've been consistent, if in your mind, right?
Yeah, like they used to be able to go across the country. Jonathan Ogden they got from St. Albans in D.C. back in the early 90s. Like, they're not doing that kind of stuff now, but they're at least building towards it. I would imagine that they're trying to get to the point where they've got a balanced roster because, like you and I talked about, they had walk-ons playing, et cetera, in the last few, like different times in the last few years. Their depth just wasn't there. The way they're recruiting, that's definitely going away. They're building in the trenches. They're recruiting nationally. They're getting more of the kids, even out of not just their own backyard. We just talked about off here. They got one of the best players from the state of Washington. This is not the UCLA I remember of any time recent. And again, it's cool. College football is better when UCLA is better, especially since they're in the Big Ten now. Teams that go out to the Rose Bowl, they're probably thinking it's kind of a vacay. The way they're recruiting, it's not going to be a vacation much longer. Like the kids got to get on campus. But, like, they're going to be better. You can see Foster building it. And remember, he played at UCLA. I remember interviewing him way back when. He was an elite recruit. He knows what it looks like because he was one. He was a dude. He was a national top 25 kind of guy. This is a program that if you do it right, and it's going to take some financial backing, which I'm concerned about down the line here. It's not UCLA's strength as a general rule, but
they do have Julio Frank from Miami. Do you know about the chancellor? He came from Miami. He's hopefully supposed to be the head of pushing forward support to UCLA. I don't mean to interrupt you there, but that is hopefully a big thing.
Because at the end of the day, if you don't pay your assistants, the back office staff, expand the staff, like some of the staffs in the SEC, just as from a recruiting point, they'll be twice as much as some of the other P4 schools. It's not a fair thing, but this is a money grab sport. If you're not throwing money at it, you're in trouble. Like Ohio State lost. Keyword lost over $30 million last year, but they got a ring. At some point, you got to go into the red, and most administrations don't want to do it. But let's get to the point where UCLA is contending for the playoff before we worry about getting into the red. So they're starting good. Now, here's my question for you, Zach. Can they start getting a few of the kids that Oregon and USC really want from SoCal? That is the next thing on the list. That you're not getting there until you get those kids. They used to. Like when I first started watching football in the late 80s, Donahue had classes top 5 on the yearly. I mean, Troy Aikman transferred in and stuff like that. They got a few breaks, but for the most part, especially trenches, they kicked butt in recruiting right there. And they'd get a couple kids, Chicago, Dallas, whatever, around the country. But it was SoCal. They got to get those kids. Right now, they're not the option that they need to be, but they're building a little bit. We looked at the list. They're getting some Trinity kids and stuff. That's awesome. And then, of course, they get Johnny Jones, a kid I'm familiar with. Dominic Sayo is his coach, a guy I've known over 20 years. He is one of the more famous coaches in the state of Florida. He loves the kid. He's at an elite academic school. He'll fit right into UCLA. So they're building a culture too. That's kind of hard to do in today's world with everybody transferring. The word culture, take it very loosely at most schools because
you still have to build it, though. You still have to have your principles, which DeShaun Foster has, his discipline, respect, enthusiasm. Sure. And he has his enthusiasm. It's not necessarily rambunctious towards media outlets and being loud, but it's enthusiasm for the recruiting, where you see Chip Kelly didn't have that. He was enthusiastic about, all right, let's get a fun little formation that leads to a touchdown, where DeShaun Foster's like, I'll be more CEO-esque and take this overall together, find the bright young minds like the Tino Sinceris of the world, the passionate guys like a Kaika Malloy on the defensive coordinating side of things. And you put that together as a staff, it reflects on the rest of your staff and eventually on the kids coming in.
Yeah, it is a trickle down because you're not going to fool the kids for long. Like Chip Kelly is an incredible play caller. He didn't dislike recruiting. He loathed it. It's just the way it is. He hates it. It's not his personality. He's not good with the younger generation. It was best for him to go to the NFL, and I think he did the right thing. But if you're going to win now, you have to find a way to circumvent it, even if you got to grit your teeth to do it, because these kids expect a lot, and so do a lot of the people around them. So there's a fine line, and not taking too many mercenaries like some programs, Texas A&M, but you have to be able to do. I mean, it's unbelievable how bad that program failed with all their talent. But you have to find a way to do what you can now and slowly build. And I like the way Foster is doing it from the inside out with linemen. He's trying to get more SoCal kids. It's starting to get there. But again, the next plateau, do you knock off SC and Oregon for the LA kids? Modern day, St. John Bosco, the 4-star, 5-star kids. And then, of course, continue to pluck away. They're getting some Florida guys now, which is so random. Maybe they can get some Atlanta kids. Maybe they can get some Chicago kids, whatever it may be. Maybe somewhere in Texas. Over the next 2 years, we're going to see what they can do because obviously being in the Big Ten, there are no freebies. That is a very rough league, especially in the trenches. So I think DeShaun was very intelligent to really not just focus on mandate it, because you will just get your doors blown off with GT traps and stuff like that. Like they're just kick out blocks and here we're coming downhill, Michigan, Ohio State, schools like that. You don't have linemen, you're going to get murdered. They're doing that. But again, we need to see that one more step up, and there's still a long way to go. We're just under 6 months from signing day. The Bruins could do a lot more damage.
Well, the Bruins sitting here top 15, top 14, depending on which outlets you look at. I'm going to circle back to that question you asked me, Brian. Can UCLA compete? And what have they done recently to compete with Oregon and USC? And what can they do? And we'll talk about that next. And is the formula for Florida recruiting, is that a recipe for success in the future? We'll talk about that and more next on Locked On UCLA. You ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go between dining out, online shopping, entertainment? Maybe you're sitting there supporting the Bruins in NIL funds, and you're like, wow, I'm losing all this. I'm losing track. Well, that's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO giving you full visibility, control of your finances. Because Monarch Money, it's not just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. Track all your accounts, investments, spending in one place, so you can stop managing your money and start building wealth. And when I started using Monarch, I realized, wait a minute, spending this much just to buy food and ice cream and go out? Well, now I can budget smarter, save more, and still do all the fun things, but know what I'm doing with a good budget. So go to Monarch Money. Let's tell you about this. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. So here we go, talking in the second segment, bringing back Brian Smith to join us. So Brian, Locked On the Portal, Locked On Seminoles, to answer your question you put in the first segment, which was, can UCLA compete with SC and Oregon? Lately, UCLA has been getting the guys in the transfer portal that didn't want to go to USC and Oregon. I think the only time in my mind in very recent history UCLA won an outright recruiting battle was for Dante Moore when they flipped him in the Chip Kelly era. And he still ended up at Oregon. UCLA got him. He started as a freshman quarterback. I think that would be a recruiting win. The performance on the field didn't end up being what UCLA wanted or the end result. But I think in my mind, off the top of my head, that's the only time UCLA won out a flat-out battle for a 5-star quarterback and flipped him right before signing day. Other than that, nothing else comes to mind other than stealing talented players who have performed for UCLA from the portal. But that's not the same as winning the recruiting battle in high school and keeping them there for 2 to 3, 4 years.
Yeah, I kind of figured that. I mean, at the end of the day, you've got to get kids to believe they're the next player to help that program get over the top. This never changes. A lot of programs in the South and the Big Ten are trying to do that. Michigan State's trying to rebuild. Auburn's trying to rebuild, etc. You have to find those guys that want to be a part of that. Again, UCLA started that trend. But it's not just adding to your roster, Zach, that's key. You know what's really fun? Adding to your roster and taking from theirs. They need to flip some USC kids. I mean, just straight up. They need to flip some USC kids, some Oregon kids. If you want to get buzz, you have to punch them in the gut. And until they do that, I'm not going to buy UCLA's back to where they need to be at this point. I know DeShaun hasn't been there long, but USC's recruiting class is insane. If you want to beat USC in the future, you got to start taking some of those players, or those games aren't going to go well. I'm sure Foster would give some coach speak if he was in front of a microphone on that, but he knows what's really going on here. So it's not like when he was a player, it was a little different. But now we're looking at a situation where they're at least building. So the next couple of weeks will be important. They should get 2 or 3 more commitments minimum over the next couple of weeks, but most programs will. Pay attention to the kids they're getting, though. How many SoCal kids? Who did they get them over? I mean, not just at an offer, but were they pushing for them? Got to actually do the research. I love to see those things where somebody says, oh, we got this guy over there. Somebody that offered him 6 months ago filled up at that spot and didn't recruit him for the next 4 months. You didn't get a recruiting win there. Are they getting the elite kids? That's the next step. And I think UCLA is on a very short list of schools that has overachieved, and UCLA might be the biggest overachiever in the country. I'm trying to think. Syracuse is kind of in that league too. Like Fran Brown can flat out recruit, but
that was on your list, right? In terms of the recruiting for what? What is that list? You have Fran Brown, what, top 10, top 12 in the coaching?
Yeah,
what is that list?
Number 9.
Number 9.
Yeah, like he's unbelievable because it's hard to get kids to Northern New York. Like UCLA is not that hard. No. I get it. Syracuse, New York, it's not quite the same. So,
well, what would it take for DeShaun Foster to join that list? And I would say, obviously, UCLA is not in a similar spot that Syracuse is, but I could say DeShaun Foster, Syracuse, not exactly apples to oranges, but they're tough places compared to where they're located and who they're going against recruiting-wise. Could DeShaun Foster get in that list of recruiters with what he's changed in the last few months or so?
He's trending that way. It'll depend on how he finishes at the end of this cycle, which the first Wednesday in December will be signing day. I'll do something after signing day. Who overachieved, who underachieved? Right now, they're in the overachieved category, and that's at the end of the day, the CEO gets the credit or he takes the fall. Right now, it's the former. They are doing really, really well. So I don't know what he's pitching exactly. Again, I would assume that it's, hey, be the guy that gets us over the top. And again, it's not hard to sell UCLA. It's one of the most beautiful campuses on planet Earth, but they haven't been anything for a long time. I mean, what was the last major bowl win for the Bruins? I have no idea. Not a bowl win, major bowl win.
If you conclude the Valero Alamo Bowl, I don't know if that counts.
I know
UCLA has competed for the Pac-12 championship game early in the first 2 iterations of it and competed in that Jim Mora era. And if UCLA didn't blow the end of the 2022 season, then maybe could have been in that Pac-12 championship game too. But I mean, actually competing in a bowl, certainly not in my lifetime when I've been an adult. That has just not happened, which is a problem.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like none of the kids remember it is why I bring it up. Kids have extremely short memories.
And the adults don't remember. I don't even remember. I'm mid-20s, mid to late 20s. That doesn't even pop in my head. I see the Rose Bowl. I'm like, love to see UCLA play in the Rose Bowl game, even though that's going to look different in the CFP era. Like that'd be fun. But you mentioned about changing the culture, changing the trajectory. A recruit I can kind of think of that UCLA is most likely not going to get. But recruiting, Talanoa Ely, I believe he's going to commit on Father's Day. That's a guy who he's supposed to go to USC. I believe he's got the family connection with USC as well. That's the type of guy UCLA, maybe not this offseason, but if Lincoln Riley's still on the hot seat and he has a bad year in 2025, that next year, the Talanoa Elys of the world, those types of players that have USC connections, they want to be keeping the family, or they're choosing between UCLA and USC, that's the type of guy UCLA's got to flip. Now, I think they put in a good effort when Ely came in. He had some family and some other cousins visiting UCLA as well, but that's when they got to win those battles. And I think DeShaun Foster is one, getting in the conversation. Two, now they're winning some of those battles. I think part three, maybe for the 27s or a late 26 signing day, that you win some of those battles and change some of those guys' minds, in my opinion.
That's the bottom line. You just hit it on the head, Zach. You've got to change some of those guys' mind. It's not easy. USC's in particular, I mean, that's probably a top 5 program in college football history, pretty conservatively. You could make an argument it's number 1. So it's cross-town rival. You're recruiting against them. They've got a ton of NIL money and all that stuff. UCLA's got their work cut out, but they have playing time to sell. And again, it's still Pasadena. Like the Rose Bowl is your home stadium. It's not real bad over here either. They got to find that first guy like an Ely that makes that decision that it's open, it's public. We think it's he picked UCLA. That's when I'll know UCLA is trending, like truly trending. Like you were talking about Fran Brown a minute ago. He's taking kids away from Florida and Florida State. I mean, in their backyard.
Yeah.
that's like unheard of. So,
and is it a recipe for success for DeShaun Foster to keep going to Florida? Do you think this is a recipe for success that can continue, or is it 2 random gets? You have to start somewhere. What do you think?
I think it's a competitive question either way. At worst, you should be able to get a few. Over the last 10 years or so, especially with NIL, over half the bumper crop of recruits in Florida leave the state. So just by the vast number, it's insane how many players come out of Florida. About 40 D1 receivers alone come out of Florida. Not overall players, wide receiver. So you have the ability. Ironically, one of them is going to be visiting UCLA here real soon from Vero Beach, same high school that Champ Smith's from. But they have to find a way to get a few of those kids. Everybody else is. Indiana dips in there. Syracuse dips in there. Minnesota has gotten kids. Like, if Minnesota can get a kid, I think that it's safe to say UCLA should be as well. So there's somebody for them if they continue to scout it. But I think they should hit Texas more than Florida. It's closer. And I think academically, the state would be better. Florida's not the greatest state academically for what UCLA wants out of their student athletes. Yeah, so like the Dallas suburbs, like Dallas is as good a city as there is in the country for overall football and like the programs. They got a lot of money in them. You walk onto a high school campus there and their football facility. I'm not kidding when I say this. Their football facilities would be not much different than the ones that are in LA that are pro football. And I'm not exaggerating. It's insane. So that would be where I would go to try to expand. But UCLA is such a national brand and international brand. Everybody knows it. So they could cherry pick a little bit in Florida, but why not cherry pick South Carolina or New York or wherever? There's no reason not to. There's too many good players around the country that are willing to travel now. There's really hardly no regional program unless it's a program that can't win.
Yeah.
No offense to Virginia Tech. They're not going to LA. They're not getting kids out of LA. Penn State can. They got a quarterback out of California now. Even like Penn State was never national under Joe Paterno. They didn't have to be. Now you got to be, they cherry pick a little bit here and there. So that puts it in perspective. But Donahue, he used to get kids from DC, Pennsylvania, Chicago, Dallas, everywhere. You can do it that way. So, and
college football legends, NFL legends, like talented, super talented players have come through UCLA. We can't forget the Rose Bowl is packed. You know, social media likes to play on the fact that the Rose Bowl is empty. Nobody cares. Like, that's not the truth. It's the truth now, sort of. It's a little tougher to get people there. But there was a day and age, and it is more likely that it's packed. And it hasn't been that far in the past that it was packed.
Yeah, right around, was it 98 to 2000, right in through there. UCLA was pretty dominant. They had a top 10 team. They had the fans in there, but when it fell off hard. And I really don't know what the reason was, but it was interesting. When they're good, it's just better for college football. So,
because UCLA is that unique school. I was asked earlier today, off the air, not by you, by Brian, but someone else, like, what, is UCLA a basketball school or a football school? Well, obviously, the easy legacy question is basketball school. You say basketball, everybody's going to care about basketball. People watching the show, they'd all say basketball. But of all the basketball schools, UCLA is the most football school of every basketball school and has the resources, in my mind, I think, to be respectable as a football school, too. Out of many schools in the country, I think UCLA is in a good position when they commit the resources to be a team and a school that can do well in both those sports. Now, how the House settlement affects that, how the $20.5 million, any lawsuits and all that, how that affects UCLA that wants to win in every sport, literally every sport. That's why they have a bunch of national championships. But I think the Bruins are positioned well as a school, even with the academics, to compete in both men's basketball. I know women's basketball has been doing really well, and football. Those are the two financial drivers of college athletics. That's just really how it is.
That's why it's be careful what you ask for. We want to win in everything, so you think you devote equal money. It's just the opposite. You have to force feed football because that's where the TV revenue is. Then you force feed all the other sports through it. I know the coaches of those other sports don't like to hear it, but it's just true. I guess we'll figure it out as we go along, because July 1st is when the House settlement comes to fruition, but there are about 4 billion lawsuits getting ready to be thrown around. So you were wise to mention that. And to that point, there was already somebody that's tried to sue on Title IX grounds already, and that's probably not going to work out for them, but they're trying to say there should be equal pay. There's zero chance that's going to win, but there's going to be all kinds of things. People are going to throw mud at a wall to drag congressmen through the mud to try to get more money. This is all politics, which is gross, but it is what it is. How does UCLA adjust to that kind of stuff, especially in LA with all the stuff that's going on there? It's a little more of a vibrant situation than some other places. And football isn't looked at the same because they want to win in everything. There are very few schools, Stanford, UCLA. There's only a handful of schools that really try to do it. Like down south where I live, okay, we won at softball, but who's the next starting quarterback? Like, it doesn't matter. It's always football season. So it's a unique animal.
Yeah, UCLA, the motto, champions made here. And for the bulk of college athletics history, it was UCLA number one in national championships. Now they're number two. And in other schools, they probably don't look at that number. But at UCLA, you look at that number. They want to catch Stanford, right? You want to get that national champ. Many sports across college athletics, you see UCLA 1 or 2 across the top of the list in most sports for who's won championships, like softball, obviously men's basketball. You can go to men's volleyball. They've won like 20, right? It just goes all the way across the board. But at some point, where's the money go? How do you disperse it? It's a fascinating question. And that's where UCLA, if they do it correctly, they can help everybody out. But if it's done wrong, that deficit that they have, even with the Big Ten money, it's going to go down the tank. And that's why it takes the right think tank, not maybe not think tank, but it takes the right group of people with the good mind, with the right mindset of how can we help these programs in the right way? As you mentioned, do you put it in the football and then it trickles later, or do you spread the wealth and that helps those programs now, but not football? So it's kind of like a wait or do now thought process. But UCLA is in a win now in the recruiting process with DeShaun Foster. Brian, thanks for coming on. I appreciate you. Appreciate all your time. And hey, put DeShaun Foster on that overachieving list, and soon he won't be overachieving. He'll just be doing things regularly like he is right now.
Well, I hope he is, because, again, I think it'd be good for college football if UCLA was back. He's trending in that direction. He is the rising recruiting star out of the blue. Who knew? So why not UCLA? They certainly got a lot to sell in Westwood.
Well, that's going to do it for us here in Locked On UCLA. Recruiting news, stay here. Men's College World Series, the Bruins in Omaha. We'll talk all about it all weekend. The last team to play for the Bruins in the academic calendar year. Can they win that national championship in this year? And we'll talk more UCLA basketball and everything on this channel. That's Brian Smith, Locked On the Portal, Locked On everything, it seems like, and Locked On Seminoles. I'm Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer of Locked On UCLA. Thanks for tuning in, and go Bruins.